Welcome back to Stratified. Welcome back to our Flat for Goodness. We have here our 2022 BRZ, and continuing our build on this car, one of the questions that is still left unanswered, that we will answer, is does the catback make a difference? So the parent catback is a popular choice for this car. It was for the Gen 1, and it happens to fit on the Gen 2, so we've got this exhaust on here. We're going to walk you a little bit through underneath the car and how it looks like, and then we're going to put it on the dyno and see what results we get. Gen 1 2.5-inch exhaust is on the Gen 2, and so much of this is similar to the Gen 1, including the angles here. So make sure that when you install this exhaust, you're aware that this is slightly angled to meet the angle of this OEM pipe, and then you will not have issues lining it up in the back. But otherwise, it all fits well on the Gen 2 car. And the only thing that would be a little nice here is that if this muffler is smaller than stock, so you could have a little bit of air getting trapped here and behind the rear bumper. There is an OEM type style diffuser, but with this gapping in here, it could create a negative pressure zone, and it could suck some air in here, causing a bit of a parachuting effect. So a nice diffuser would take up that gap. But otherwise, there it is. Simple install. The Catback exhaust is on the Gen 2. No exhaust install is complete without some sound clips. So let's see if we can get this microphone to pick up on exactly how the car sounds. This is a cold start. So that's a cold start. That's turned into normal idle. You can hear that subtle Subaru rumble. And let's see if we can pick up a couple of revs. Nice inside of idle, and some good throatiness on the revs. You know what they say in most things, 2 is better than 1. And since we're doing bolt-on mods without changing the tune, I thought we'd also try what is going to be eventually a popular mod on this car, and that is an intake. So we went out and designed one. We measured the inner mouth diameter and made sure that that is correct. We put a velocity stack on it, and we're going to put a high flow filter on it. So this is our 3D printed stratified prototype intake, and it's going to sit exactly where the stock intake is. We're not doing any sort of heat shielding at this point. We just want to see if the intake, the stock intake, is in any way kind of a choke point in terms of flow, and get this rolling on the dyno and get us some numbers and a little bit of a sound. Induction sounds from these engines can be sweet or could be annoying. So we're gonna see how this thing sounds. Functional prototype intake is in. Fitment is good. MAF sensor is good. We're clearing everything here. Looks good. Let's see how it sounds. Ooh, pretty juicy. All right, let's get this car rolling on the dyno. Let's see some numbers. For your listening pleasure, this is what the car sounds like with the parent catback, the Borla UL, and our intake on there. So listen for that intake sound. It sounds quite neat. Now, on to the most interesting aspect of the analysis here, and that is when we look at the data. So here are the dyno pulls on our Mustang dyno. So a reminder that on this car we have the parent catback, and then we have the Borla UL headers, and you can see that the torque dip is not present here, but we have this little hump just past 4,000 RPM. This is similar to what you see on a 2.0 car, and then it goes on from here and it peaks out just past 6,500 RPM. Stock tune, of course, because no tuning solution is available just yet. But
let's put this into some context, right? So let's look at how this this behaved before putting in the catback. So here is the pole with just the headers. So you can see that we're doing a little bit better still here, very slight amount better at the very beginning of the pole. So we're talking about a difference of just a 5 foot-pounds of torque or so increase there. Still maybe noticeable under the at low loads. And then up top you can see that the two start to deviate a little bit, where the catback does give you a good 6 horsepower just in the top end over there. So the peak numbers remain relatively the same. So peak numbers are right here, these dots, but the catback gives you a little bit of top end, a little bit more top end. and that's that 5 horsepower. Now let's do a little look at how this compares to a completely stock car with the stock headers and with the stock catback. And this is just a reminder, we are getting more torque in this dip section and therefore more horsepower. And past this point right here with the UEL headers, the unequal length, we are losing a little bit of power there. However, at the very top end, we reclaimed that. So the catback has allowed us to reclaim the power that was lost from these unequal length headers past 6,500 RPM. If you are racing and you're in that RPM region all the time, then then this is definitely something that to look at. So that is that. Now we also had the intake, so we put the intake onto the car, and let's see at what results we got there. So here it is. Here's our pole with the intake. Now you can see that now we have the headers, the catback, and this low end seems to be very much the same. But up top, the intake allows us, is this higher line here, it allows us to gain a little bit of power before peak horsepower. So we're looking at, well, almost 10 horsepower in that region. So that's looking good. And we're pretty happy with the results. The car sounds better, and overall it seems to help a little bit in induction noise and a little bit of horsepower. So then we decided to do the experiment with the hood closed. So initially we did the pole with the hood open, where the intake was exposed to a lot of fresh air, just the ambient that was the ambient temperature to what we had in the shop. And then we closed the hood. And when we closed the hood, I think that you guys will really enjoy what happens next, or maybe you won't. Oof, we lost a lot of power across the board. And up at the top here now, instead of having that gain of almost 10 horsepower, now we have a loss of almost 15 horsepower. So we're like, wow, this is really not performing well. And we took another pull, and in this second pull, it did even worse. So clearly something was making the car unhappy with the hood closed. We put the stock intake back on, closed the hood, and we gained our power back. So what's going on here? Well, the reality is that the open air filter got heat soaked. We have a data logger in place, and the data logger allowed us to, although it's a little rudimentary in terms of how quickly it logs, we were able to log a pull. And here's the intake air temperature with the hood open. So you can see that at basically at 7,200 RPM right there, and we have about 14 degrees Celsius, and our timing advance is about 22 degrees and a half. So that's with the intake and the hood open. And then we went ahead and closed the hood and did the pull, and look at the difference in results. So we are talking about 52 degrees Celsius now. It is halfway to boiling at the end of this pull, and at 7,200 RPM, same RPM, and look at the timing. So we are down now to, sorry, timing's right there. We're down now to 19 degrees. So you can see the massive difference that having an open air element and intake with the hood closed does. A lot of dyno pulls and a lot of testing you see is done with the hood open. Well, this is certainly should be an eye-opening event for a lot of people, and should also have you questioning putting in an intake that sucks air from the engine compartment where it is heat soaked. Because once again, going back to the dyno, you can see that the car lost so much power, and you can feel it struggle on the dyno. And the fact that it even lost power throughout the entire pull indicates that it probably knocked, and some of these little dips here also are indicative of knock. And with it having knocked, it learned the poor quote-unquote octane of the fuel, and that was simply induced by extremely hot air temperatures. Once again, we put in the stock airbox and temperatures stabilized and returned back to normal. So when choosing an intake, when designing an intake for this car, it is very important to consider where the air is being drawn from. We deal with a lot of turbocharged cars, and there you have a couple of variables in the way. The turbocharger heats up the air, and then there's the intercooler to cool it back down. But on this naturally aspirated car, the air that's being pulled in by the motor is exactly at the forefront of that intake. It's being pulled in right through that intake, and the air density is affected by having it much hotter, and it makes the engine much more knock prone. So there's a massive measurable effect that an open air element intake will have on the performance of your car, and it's not a positive effect. So just to sum things up here, the Catback added a good 5-7 or so horsepower just to the very top end, and the intake did add a little bit of power, which means that the car could benefit from something that's a little bit more or freer flowing than the stock intake. However, you must make sure that intake is properly sealed from the engine bay heat, and it's pulling air from a cold location. So we're going to continue our build. We're going to continue experimenting and showing you guys the results. So stay tuned for more and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you guys in the next one.